Hi, I'm Jim Campanini, the editor of The Sun. We're here to welcome Deb Goldberg. She's running for state treasurer on the Democratic ticket. The primary is September 9th. Well, Deb, thank you very much. And why don't you tell us a little about your background and why you are running for state treasurer?
Well, Jim, thank you for asking me, and thank you all for having me here today. Um, you know, I'm running for state treasurer because I strongly feel that I'd like to be able to give every woman, man, and child the financial power and skills they need to get ahead in this tough world. Economic stability and economic security are not just buzzwords to me. They are truly a personal mission. And I come by it very naturally. My mother's great grandmother arrived in the north end of Boston and opened a little grocery store with her 11 kids. Every single solitary friend or relative who arrived were given a job and a roof over their heads. And those families together grew in the food business, and that became Stop and Shop. But Stop and Shop was about economic stability and economic security. Generations of families, 1, 2, 3 generations at a time, worked there for good jobs that they could count on. We brought in the unions ourselves because that represented our values. And I worked there first as a clerk, a member of 1445, and later on in executive positions. After I went to college, BU, again after BC Law School, where I got my law degree, and went right back there after getting my MBA at Harvard. And we went through a hostile takeover. And we were forced out because we wouldn't fire our families. And I took my business skills and I took my finance skills and I turned to the public sector. As you may know, I'm the president of an adoption agency. I was one of the founders and the treasurer of a school for kids with severe cognitive disabilities. I'm an advisor at the Greater Boston Food Bank because hunger in this country, to me, is actually immoral when we have so much. And I also ran for public office because from the very beginning in our family, not just my parents, but with my grandparents, we didn't see a separation between our business lives, our values, and being politically active. It represented what our values were, and we knew what a part of the fabric of Massachusetts we were. I mean, 50,000 employees at its peak at Stop and Shop. And so my dad had run for local office. I had been Michael Dukakis's mascot in his coffee truck, not when he ran for governor, but state rep. I was 7 years old, and my sparkle sun, the primaries, they weren't a primary. The local elections were in March, and I was wearing a snowsuit. By the time my dad ran, I was a field organizer, what we call them today. And so I ran for local office, became chairman of the Board of Selectmen in Brookline, and I am actually the Senate President's appointee in the Treasurer's Office in the Commonwealth Covenant Fund. There is so much that we can do at the Treasurer's Office. First of all, it's an executive position. There are more than 9 departments, and they're very, very diverse. And so you really need to have the kind of business skills and business background in managing people, management, that understands different business models in order to do this job properly. But I also bring my values to the table. So a lot of people ask you can stop me at any time if you want to ask any more questions, but a lot of people ask, what does the treasurer actually do? And I answer that question. Cash management, debt management, unclaimed property, veterans benefits are under the treasurer's office, a very important thing. It is managing and investing what is now, after this year's returns, the $60 billion pension fund. It's the lottery. $1 billion in unrestricted general funds to every city and town in this Commonwealth, the only thing that's unrestricted. This past winter, I don't think any community had budgeted for the amount of snow. Guess what paid for it? Unrestricted general funds. That is how important the lottery is. And it's also an area where there's a lot of very important public policy initiatives. Right now, there is a financial literacy grant fund. As treasurer, and this is why I said to you, this is a job that I'm passionate about, that I want to do for a very long time. I am going to take that grant fund, and by the time I'm done, it will be a robust, statewide, laser-focused financial literacy program that will make sure that people aren't harmed the way they have been in the past. Giving people.
How much is in that literacy fund now?
I believe it's $100,000 fund. They spent $87,000, but we don't want just a financial literacy grant fund. We want a robust state program. And that's why when I say to you I want to be there a long time, I understand the political challenges for that and how we have to work. If we're going to educate kids, that means we have to work with DESE, with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, that we need to work with them to get the financial literacy skills into the curriculum because they have set curriculums, which you know. So substituting, I can visualize the word problem right now. So-and-so is told to buy a house. They only need 5% down. This is the value of the house. Value drops. What happens to so-and-so? Very simple stuff, but stuff that kids don't know. And then work with other groups in terms of outreaching to immigrant communities, to the minority communities. I intend to give free tax preparation. Why? I'll tell you why. We're driving in consistently to Worcester, for example. Now, I'm a retailer, so I watch what goes on in business districts and what the vitality is, what are the storefronts selling, because I care about these things. I kept on seeing tax prep, tax prep, tax prep. I said, what is this about? Are you aware that people, particularly people who've never done a tax return, who might be new citizens, or who don't have the education, go into these storefronts? They are told, well, we'll do it for you. We'll give you a payment up front. We will take the risk of getting your refund, but that belongs to us. Hard-working people, working people, people who are citizens in our country, are not getting what they deserve because they just don't know how to do it. So in the same way that we work with unclaimed properties to outreach to the community, that we work through our financial literacy programs to reach out to the community, and working with nonprofits, we are going to supply free tax preparation to make sure, when I talk to you about giving people the financial power they need, this is the kind of economic empowerment and stability I'm talking about.
I didn't even know that was illegal. Is that legal?
It is legal. It is legal. How about protecting seniors from reverse mortgages? How many of you want your parents to have that as their estate planning? Reverse mortgages had a bunch of IPOs this year. They prey on older people. This is not always, when your only asset is your home, you know what happens when people go into long-term care. What kind of amount of money they need to come up with to pay for their care. You have the Fonz and you have Thompson selling you a reverse mortgage on television, a lot of seniors are susceptible to this kind of thing if they don't understand it. And then I also am going to create, and I know you'll love this, no cost to the taxpayer, not a line item in the budget, a college savings plan. It is being done elsewhere. The head of the National Treasurers, she was the head of the National Treasurers Association of the United States. I worked with her, and we are creating a college savings plan, which she has already done, where each child in kindergarten who is identified on the free lunch program is given a $50 college savings fund. And it's based upon the bank fees that pay for it. And they do it because they hold that savings plan 20 years, 25 years, and they make money on that. So kids are 7 times more likely to go to college. It's already been shown. And in Massachusetts, with where our growth is going in the 21st century, it is more likely in the healthcare fields, high tech, and biotech. And kids need at least an AA to do that. And so I feel that that's giving kids an opportunity to learn both financial literacy and aspiration in terms of their education. The parents love it, the kids
So you're going to start off every kid with $50
right.
from the banks that will run this program.
Right. And it's working elsewhere. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. What I need to do is go out and find good programs that are working. Another great program.
What about a tuition program similar to what this community, a lending program for businesses?
Right.
The treasurer's put up, I think, $35 million, and then they can make low cost, they can do low cost loans or something from that.
Well, actually, it's more than 35 now. It's
How
up
much?
to over 100 million,
100
and the
million, okay.
community
Mm.
banking partnership.
I think Lowell has
So what?
community banking partnership.
Right. Well, this is another exciting program that the present treasurer instituted. I would say it's been 2.5 years, 2 3/4 years. When I come in as treasurer, it's the perfect time to evaluate the program and how it's working. Do an evaluation and making sure that the loans are going where they need to be going. That we have 60 banks that are enrolled right now. Well, there are a lot more than 60 community banks in the state. For those that are not joining in, why? Why aren't they joining in? Are there rules that are ominous? Is it not user friendly? So, this is what I would like to do right away. Do an evaluation of the community banking partnership and make it better, so that and understand where we're going with it, and then put more money in. I don't want to, it's still the taxpayers' money, so we don't want to move it into a program until we know where it's going and how we're working with it. That's what you would typically do with a new program anyway. That's what we will do with the financial literacy programs. The pilots under the grant fund are really good pilots. I want to now see impacts. Every program that you invest in, whether it's in government or elsewhere, and other work that I do, we always then want to see statistically how it's working until you go forward with it. Otherwise, you could be funding a program that may not be reaching the goals that you want it to reach. So the community banking partnership is one that has been an outstanding model that I very much want to continue. Now, $100 million, when you have all taxpayer dollars coming into banks and sitting there and them making money on it, is not a lot. So we can escalate that as soon as we have the data and knowing how it's working and where it's going. I absolutely want to do that. I also want to do more in terms of who we're investing in through the pension fund. We should be investing in businesses in Massachusetts. Why not? They're creating jobs here. And so I intend as treasurer, in the same way I've done in other roles that I'm in, having every investment manager in. First of all, I want to know what their strategies are. Massachusetts, we were the second highest return in the state in this last year. Not in the state, in the country. California was number one, and they're really their own country.
It was about 17%?
Yeah, it was over 17%. So I have to say that I think that's pretty darn good, and I think you would agree with that. With those kind of returns, what a lot of people don't understand is we will be more fully funding the pension before 2036. And you can also go out there and you can do actuarials to reduce the rate of return. We did that in Brookline, where I come from, where is now going to be fully funded by 2030 and at a 7%, and it's going to be sustainable. So once it's fully funded, it will be able to sustain itself at 7%. That's the kind of mindset I bring to the Treasurer's Office in terms of looking at the pension fund. But still, regardless of the fact that it was 17.2, I think it was, or 3 this year, you want to know what every single investment manager is anticipating moving forward, who they are, where are the risk factors, and even in the risk area, there are ways to have, I know there's a small percentage invested in hedge funds, and it's small, because you have to have some risk in order to get growth.
But why is it so important if you outsource that to an independent manager like it is now, and you provide the oversight? Why is it so important that you have to know where that money is being invested as long as the returns come in? I mean, one of the opponents in this race, Barry Feingold, says that he wants to divest all the money from fossil fuel companies.
Right.
And I said, why? I says, you should be more concerned about the returns and where the returns are coming for the citizens of Massachusetts,
Right.
than starting to get a socially conscious portfolio. I mean, now, you're saying similar things, like you want to know where the money is invested. Certainly, we don't want it in the Russian mob, okay? But why?
But can I tell you, you
I mean,
don't
are
want it
you
in the-
people just playing to the liberal left in this election with that, as opposed to saying what's in the best interest of Massachusetts citizens? High returns are what Massachusetts citizens want. They want that pension paid off.
Right.
Okay, those fully funded pensions.
Right. Do you?
No, I'm
but
just
you-
asking a question. I mean,
So my position is that you can do both simultaneously, and that's what I know how to do that. It may be, I mean, I'm not going to talk about any of my opponents at all in their positions, but I really have the background to know how to do this job. I have the business background and I have the finance background to do this job. And if you look at, when you come to fossil fuels, this is a movement, and what's going to happen is that what's going on nationally is going to degrade the value of fossil fuels. It's already happening. And so places like Texaco and Mobil are realizing they've got to write it down on those books, so their investments are going to go down without even Massachusetts doing anything. It is my job to be looking at where are our investment managers seeing going forward. The new green technologies that are going to replace fossil fuels, that's where the big growth is going to come, because once that clicks, you know it's going to take off. So you want to anticipate, how are people layering in their investment strategies. Why does the treasurer need to know that? Because at the end of the day, the treasurer is responsible to all the taxpayers. And you don't just hand it off to investment managers who candidly are also working for fees. They're not responsible to both the state employees and local employees whose funds have invested with the state. That's not who their constituency is, and that's not who they're going to answer to. The treasurer is the leader, and the treasurer should know everything about what's going on with those pension funds. It's why
I agree.
locally.
But what about if those companies, Massachusetts companies, give to your campaign or anybody else's campaign? Does that factor into it?
Well,
I mean,
candidly, none of those companies have. I mean, you
okay.
can go look.
But
at
I'm just saying, just in theory, it could happen.
It
all
could
right?
happen, I would suppose, and then you'd have to look at that. But can I tell you something, honestly, Jim? I mean, I said, and I don't mind saying this on the air because it's who I am. $500 doesn't buy my position.
No.
I mean, I'm not running because I'm a career politician. I am running as someone who today would have been very happy to be a grocer. But I mean that, and I know there's stuff up here.
No, I just say that we in Massachusetts like to create encumbrances. It seems, we talk the good game about clean elections, then we don't follow it. We talk about everybody's holding their ground and there's distances. I mean, I look at these deals, from the Partners Health deals to the Brennan Group deal that the Attorney General has done, and everybody I think is well intentioned, but then they just go down this road where they invite sometimes conflicts of interest that
So
just rise.
that's
to
why I want to give you
so-
two examples of my history.
So I
have
love
a
the
record.
independent manager. I love the treasurer supplying the oversight. But when we start picking and choosing, what should be in the portfolio and this and that, and I might not like Raytheon because it produces missiles that kill people. So now do we start saying, oh, we can't invest in a good company, a good Massachusetts company because of that? Because some people
Well,
are
it's
against
where, something, this takes me right back to when we were in the food business. There were things that we wouldn't sell. But what we also said is, if we were going to look for every single little item that may have something, then the shelves would be empty. But I want to talk about conflicts of interest. I was involved with Stop and Shop. My family was involved in Stop and Shop. We went through a hostile takeover and we were pushed out. That was a long time ago. That was 1988. When I was a selectman, and I know I wasn't even the chair yet, so we're talking about maybe 12 years after the hostile takeover. There was a Stop and Shop license. It was for a gas station in Brookline that the Board of Selectmen had to vote on and sign off on. I abstained. Why? Because there are people who think I may still have something to do with Stop and Shop. I come from that kind of background. I'm going to give you another example. I received in 1998 a contribution of $500 from a personal friend. That person called me a year later and wanted me to have their grandchild moved from one public school to another public school. I said, I don't interfere in where the schools place children. I said, and besides which, actually, you want your grandchild moved away from a school that I think is a wonderful school, has just gone through a renovation. No, the group of kids at the other, and they said, I gave you $500, and I said, I'm going to be honest. I thought you gave me $500 because you thought I would be a really good selectman. I said, but if that's how you feel, I am more than happy to return your contribution. I'm not running for treasurer because of what people can contribute to me. I am running for treasurer because how I passionately feel about our state. I was brought up that way. Every member of my family has committed their lives, not just one member of my family, multiple members of my family, to making a difference in Massachusetts. I was brought up with those values. It's why I was going to work at Stop and Shop, and you know Stop and Shop is very much a part of the community. There isn't an institution in Massachusetts that hasn't been touched by one member of my family or another. That's why I'm running, because I truly believe passionately about what I'm doing. As I said to you, it wouldn't be on someone's bucket list to just run statewide more than once. Trust me. I'm doing it so that I can spend the rest of my career making a difference for people. And I haven't spent time in the legislature. I haven't been an attorney general or a lieutenant governor. I am doing this because this is an area of the state where I know how to do the job. And I believe I can do it well. I understand how you feel about picking and choosing, investment,
I'm just
divestment.
playing devil's advocate.
I know.
And let me clarify before I get petitioned from Raytheon. I love Raytheon and I love missiles. So don't
Actually,
put any
Jim,
protesters.
I'm going to
front of this.
invest in trotters.
Any
people
thoughts
won't-
on, no, with your background, okay, in
Yes.
the supermarket world, what do you think about the market
I knew you were
basket
going to
side?
ask
Well,
me.
we're asking
Everybody-
everybody about it.
Well,
Since,
everybody asked
you
me
know,
about it. I was asked 4 weeks ago about this, and exactly what's going on is what I was worried about. This is a privately held company, obviously, and being up in this neck of the woods, you and I both have known the family for a very long time. They were tough competitors of ours, and they were good at what they did. And but it's a personal family matter that has impacted 25,000 other families. And it's the opposite of the Stop and Shop story. My grandfather had 3 other siblings. He divided the stock up evenly. He worked there, my parents worked there, and I worked there. I was working for the whole family because of the way we felt. And not just our family, but all those other families that began with us, and many of them continued with us. You know, when I'm traveling the state today, people come up to me and say, I worked there, I knew your family. A woman came up to me in Weymouth and said, my dad wasn't even a store manager, he was a front end manager, and we were able to move to the suburbs, 4 kids, my mother didn't have to work when you folks were there. It's changed, and it has changed. And as I said too, I'd be a grocer today. I look at the Demula situation and I said it needs to be resolved quickly. It's not just Market Basket now that's being impacted, and 25,000 families, not just employees, but their families. But I said, what about in the strip malls they're in? The small business owner next door that relies on the traffic. I said about the vendors weeks ago. We have small suppliers and vendors here in Massachusetts who are getting killed. It's impacting the economy of the entire Merrimack Valley. And so I said, somebody has to stop this now. John Keller asked me that on the air weeks ago. I think it is wonderful that the employees feel the way they do. And that means that the Demoulises have been great operators. And actually, when I read the description, it's really not different from the way we were at Stop and Shop. My grandfather was in the stores. I was with him at 6 years old. He went through the back rooms. He shook everybody's hand. Everybody called him Mr. Sidney. Same kind of thing, the flavor of what the food business was always about, which is lost. And I said also to Keller, I said, they need somebody to come in and buy the company fast and then put Arthur T. back in charge, because the employees are passionate about Arthur T. But at this point, it's really become a serious economic issue. And I was hoping that a business roundtable or a group of business people could have gotten together and gotten them in the room. This required intervention very early because too many other people are getting hurt. It's how I feel about it. The boycott by itself doesn't achieve anything because the value of the company is declining so rapidly. And it's bleeding, and it could, the Griffin report now has, they commented on it every couple of days, and even they said this. They said, the company's getting destroyed. It may be better off even closing for the time being just to hold it in place. So I think it's a tragedy. I find this a tragedy.
I think the 3 independent directors have just failed in leadership because they're the ones who hold the cards.
That's exactly.
And they've just, if they were truly independent,
Right.
they'd be concerned about the shareholders in the company.
Yes.
And heck with either Artie.
Right.
And do something. And
the RDS versus RDT story goes back another generation, which
Yeah.
and we know, and it's complicated, and the complications. I mean, when you're up here in Lowell and you talk to people, there are people who say, RDS isn't a bad guy either. And it's been painted bad guy, good guy. But the reality is, it's about the employees. The employees are losing so much, and their families, and the vendors, and the suppliers, and the small business owners, in your economy up here. I don't know if they advertise in the Lowell Sun. I have to assume they do. Advertising dollars. The ramifications, it's like an avalanche. And so something's got to stop. I mean, I know it's a private business, but I don't think it was inappropriate for Maggie Hassan and Deval Patrick to try to get them in the room if no one else was going to be able to do it. Because New Hampshire and Massachusetts are being impacted. And who will need to pick that up if families go on unemployment or they need services? The taxpayers. So at that point, it does become the responsibility of government to try to come to a resolution. And so that's how I feel. And I am hoping the deadline, I don't know if the deadline will be met today. I hope it'll be met over the weekend. Something has to stop. Something has to stop this.
Good.
I want to ask you a lottery question. I've been around long enough to have seen the beginning of the lottery.
Me too.
It was one game a week, and then it was a nightly drawing, and and
remember.
but it's sort of grown
Organically.
Okay. Is the lottery getting too big? Is there going to be a point at which people tune out of the lottery? And secondarily, if the casino ever gets built here, what's going to happen to the lottery?
Well, okay, so there are 3 questions here.
Right.
Number one, the Massachusetts lottery is actually one of the most successful ones in the country. I think that we know casino gambling comes in, you have a 10% hit right off the top. This is not a good thing for communities. No matter how you feel about gambling, the deal that was struck, which was way back when you and I were kids, was about getting it through in order to give unrestricted general funds to cities and towns. Cities and towns means people. It doesn't just mean some building. It means people. It means how we pay teachers, how we get the garbage picked up and the streets plowed. I've really looked at the lottery business. It's actually a very good, interesting business model, and it's a good business model. But there is potential to do more there. And in fact, I have, having come from retailing and marketing and branding and promotion, that I bring into the lottery like no other person who's probably been treasurer that I can remember back. So we were the people who invented Mrs. B and mini pricing and all of that. So I am a promotional oriented person. I also get a group of people that no one's thinking about. and that is the small convenience store and gas station owners who are scared to death of a 10% drop. And why? It's not that they're making money on the lottery sales, but when you go into a convenience store to buy a lottery ticket, you may be picking up Tylenol, potato chips, crayons, pens, a bottle of milk. That's their business. Traffic flow, like when I talk about the small business owner next to a market basket. These small business owners rely on traffic flow. It is a basic retail term, and when I've met with several, and a lot of them are really good tax-paying first-generation families, the Bangladeshi community. You don't hear anything about this vast Bangladeshi community in Massachusetts. Guess what they own? Convenience stores, gas stations with convenience stores. See, he's nodding. Lebanese families that live all over the state. Convenience stores, gas stations. They're scared to death of a 10% drop in lottery sales. So I've been meeting with them, and when I talk about, my family were immigrants and we had a small supermarket. I get traffic flow. I get what you need. I get where you're coming from. That in itself makes them feel differently. What treasurer has said this to the retailers and has the background to try to make a difference? And on top of that, given we don't know where the ballot question will go in November, I have begun putting together and I'm not free right now to release names, people who really understand A, this business, and B, advertising and marketing, to put together a group to even look at where we will sit competitively. I came out of the supermarket business with 1% profit margin, less than 1%, actually 0.9% profit margin. I know how to operate successfully in a competitive environment. And it is through the things that we do through promotion and branding and evaluating and change. In addition to that, shifting, you've all seen lottery machines. They're old machines. They're actually 18 years old. Shifting to more modern machinery that you can be more flexible on how you can individualize promotions, changing things up. I mean, one of the things that was said to me by someone at the lottery is, we had some tough times this year with all the snow. And because, sometimes people didn't come out as much. And I said, have you ever thought of having a snow promotion? No, they said. So, that kind of thing. And so we will be competitive. If casino gambling comes in, and we need to be competitive, because again, I'm a business person. We're restricted in the local level to 2.5% plus new growth. But our costs aren't restricted to 2.5% plus new growth. Those unrestricted funds are critical to funding basic services. Those aren't used for icing on the cake. They're used for basic services. And so I take, I have to be candid. I've never bought a lottery ticket in my life. But I take the responsibility seriously, and I understand the wide range of people who are affected. It's not just some obscure fund at state government. It's the little people. And so that's what I bring to the lottery.
How are you going to vote on question 2?
I will vote against casino gambling for 3 reasons. 1, I don't think it's long-term sustainable economic growth. When I look at even Las Vegas and watch the peaks and valleys of the economy in Vegas, when I look at Atlantic City, I see a disaster. I don't know if we're going to end up saturating the market, and I don't know that the risks of losing 10% of our lottery sales are worth it, and the additional burdens that will come from addictive gambling. And I personally experienced that within my own, not my family, but my boyfriend's family when I was in high school and college. I saw someone who had that issue, who it ultimately, I babysat for the kids, it ended in divorce and then suicide. And so having seen that, like my parents support casino gambling. I don't, because of my own personal experience. And then I just assume not deal with the 10% drop off and be able to build the lottery from where it is going forward. So I have, a range of issues. I'm not personally a gambler, even though I love horses. I haven't actually placed a bet on the horse. I like to look at them. You remember I was a horseback rider.
Now, the lottery was originally constructed that 100% of it would go back to cities and towns.
Right.
Now I think we're in the mid to low 70s that actually go. 70%, 73%.
I don't think it's that low.
I think it's that low, yeah. Because the legislature takes some of that money and parks it, in the reserve funds, the rainy day fund, and then you have administrative fees. I thought it was 73% that goes back. I mean, they just keep constantly chipping away.
I'm actually an advocate for looking at the distribution formula.
Yeah.
When I read the Globe article, I was like, whoa, where did this... So it's the legislature who's determined the distribution formula, and it has no rhyme or reason. I mean, I think that we have to have an equitable distribution of the lottery dollars. I mean, you don't want a community where none of the taxpayers there have actually have money arriving at the lottery, and yet they get a whole bunch back, whereas another community, and I'm sure that Lowell probably puts a lot into the lottery and doesn't get back what they actually put in. So not that the treasurer can control that, but I think the treasurer can push for people to be looking at it. And I actually was fascinated that the other two individuals who are running for treasurer come from the legislature, but have never actually taken a position on something that they want to be responsible for. I look at it and say, legislature, you need to be looking at this, because over the years it's become completely inequitable.
Good idea. Good. Right.
You mentioned having to be talked into running. Tell us more about that.
I turned 60 years old on Mother's Day, and I've been an activist, a Democratic activist, as you heard, my whole life. So 7 years old was the age when I was put in Michael Dukakis's truck, and it's 10 when I actually not only canvassed with these little calendars with my dad's picture on them, but also ran the rides to the polls. I'm an elected state committee woman. I am back being a town meeting member in my own community and a commissioner of the Neighborhood Conservation District Commission. So this is a real activist here. And I was always happy to continue to work every cycle for candidates that I believe in, even traveling outside of our state to work on presidential elections. So I take we talk about we should be teaching civics in school because we don't have enough people who are passionate about civic life. I am passionate about civic life. Even in my nonprofit work, I do so many things that are involved in civic life. Last summer, when it was first suggested to me that I look at the treasurer's race, and it was suggested by people who feel that the present treasurer and his background in business, a Harvard MBA, I'm a Harvard MBA, came from a business that was unionized, so understood the dynamic of that there's a general belief, and I think if you were to poll people and say, has the treasurer been a good treasurer, people would generally say absolutely, and brought good ideas in, like the community banking partnership, and a return of 17+% on the pension fund. People saw that in me, a similarity, and also felt that having run statewide once before, that I understood the dynamic of how to do that, and that I would be effective as a Democrat also running and pulling in independents and Republicans. And I can tell you, if you look at my contributions, plenty of Republicans are supporting me. Why? For the same reason they supported me locally. I would stand in front of a Brookline. So you're talking about, how Bennett talked about those crazies in Cambridge and Brookline on NBC Meet the Press. I came out of a Brookline with the Coalition Against Unfair Taxation supporting me and Brookline PACs. And I could stand in front of a Brookline town meeting and start the budget discussions about we do nothing that impacts the AAA bond rating. Because at the end of the day, we have to provide services for people. So and my family and I for generations have credibility at being really good business people, but knowing how to do it well. Not lose money, not raid rainy day funds or reserves. I mean, I'm the same person who said one-time funds for capital expenditures, not for ongoing operations. And yet, the capital expenditures, I can explain why those meet our values. Why school building assistance, for example, will support where we want our kids to be educationally. Why that's so important. Rebuilding schools, outfitting them as a 21st century classroom with smart boards, with internet, with actually safe schools. A lot of people don't talk about how important it is to have security in our schools today. But look again, California this week. They were able to stop these kids from going in and shooting. But parents need to feel that their kids are safe, and we have an obligation to keep our kids safe. So safe schools, a lot of the old buildings cannot have security put into them. They don't have the wiring, they don't have the kind of doors, nothing like that. So safe 21st century schools, our schools have to do so much today. So, getting back to your question, which was, I got lost in my own thoughts.
Being
Plugged
talked
into.
into running, so,
So
you were
because of,
apprehensive,
right,
I
so
imagine.
people, it wasn't that I was apprehensive, I hadn't thought about it.
Okay.
It was much more, okay, I'll consider it. Let me tell you, raising money, traveling. My family's was on vacation this week. My vacation was Springfield, Pittsfield. I mean, and I all of a sudden someone took a picture of a leaf that had already turned red, and I went, where did the summer go? Where did the summer go? So I understood what the race would be about, and but I wasn't. I felt strongly I needed to be passionate about the job. If you aren't passionate about the job, the sacrifices that you make, both for yourself and for your family, may not be worth it. The good news is my kids are 24 and 22, so when people say, how are your kids? I say, I don't know, but you know what? They're old enough to take care of themselves, and they are, which is, in fact, they have chipped in to take care of things that I used to take care of, like walking the dogs, like doing the food shopping, going to CVS, those kind of things. So I needed to know I'd be passionate about the job and feel that I had the background and the skills to do it right. I'm not doing this so it can take me somewhere else. I am doing this because I'm excited about this job. And when I sat down and I looked at, I've worked with the retirement boards, I've worked on pensions, I've worked on more fully funding pensions. I understand how you do that. I understand the bond ratings. I know why we're AA+ or AA1 and not AAA. A lot of people don't know that. It's because, would you like to know why?
Debt rating.
Right.
So I did.
You see, Jim knows. Other states have county systems. They throw the debt off on it. A lot of people don't know that. And some people think our unfunded liability may be why. It's not. Actually, Moody's and Standard & Poor's are comfortable with the progress we're making on the unfunded liability. That
Is
is
that like OPEB?
no, it's
Okay.
both OPEB and our pension fund. The reforms that were put in place in the last 5 years really are going to did plug the system, and moving forward, you're going to realize enormous gains from that. It just takes years to accumulate them. I mean, it will be upwards over billions of dollars that will come from those reforms that took place in the last 5 years. So I really went in and I looked at the job and I said, you know what? This is where I can make a difference. Because for me, it's about that. And when it was about making a difference, economic stability and security for people in our business world, it's about making a difference in public life. And that's why when I finally came down to that conclusion, and I'm going to tell you, had both of my parents standing by my side as I made that decision. And they supported it because they know that I am driven by our values. And they know I have the background and skills to do the job. And they're 83 and 84 today, and they're as excited and committed as I am. And it represents who we've always been.
Well, Deb,
Yes?
on that, I want to thank you for coming to the Sun and expressing your thoughts, and I wish you well in the September 9th primary.
Thank you, Jim.
Stay right there. Nice photo. Good.